Pre-dynastic period. Before 3100 BCE, Egypt was divided into two separate regions, Upper Egypt in the south and Lower Egypt in the north. People lived along the Nile River, where the land was fertile and full of life, with plenty of vegetation and waterfowl. They relied on hunting, farming, and raising animals for their livelihood. They also created beautiful pottery, as shown by archaeological findings. The Badarian culture in Upper Egypt was skilled in farming and pottery making. Later, cultures like Naqada, Amratian, Gerza, and Sumerian appeared, trading with nearby regions like Ethiopia, Nubia, and the Near East. The Naqada culture became dominant, with strong leaders managing farming and trade. Their first capital was Nakan, later moved to Abydos. The Naqadas made early advancements, such as creating symbols that evolved into Egyptian hieroglyphs, developing two-dimensional art, and using a grid for proportions in art. They also crafted painted pottery, figurines, ivory carvings, and slate palettes. Early dynastic period, around 3100 BCE, Upper and Lower Egypt were unified under the rule of the first pharaoh, traditionally identified as Menes, also known as Meni. However, some historians believe that this unification might have been initiated by King Narmer. Memphis, located in Lower Egypt, became the capital city and served as the administrative hub. From Memphis, rulers managed fertile lands, trade routes, and temple constructions, laying the foundation for a powerful and organized state. Art and architecture flourished during this period. One of the most remarkable achievements was the construction of the Step Pyramid at Saqqara for King Djoser. This was the first pyramid ever built. Artists developed conventions for three-dimensional art and used symbolic positions to represent status and power. For example, figures of pharaohs were depicted larger in scale to show their importance. Seated and standing poses became standardized, and defeated enemies were often shown nude to symbolize their loss of status. The Old Kingdom, known as the Age of the Pyramids. During this time, Egypt was ruled by strong kings. They had helpers like viziers, scribes, priests, and local officials to manage the kingdom. Arts, science, and crafts improved. Painting became more popular, and many pyramids were built. In the Fourth Dynasty, the Great Sphinx and the Great Pyramids were built at Giza. During the Fifth Dynasty, pyramids were decorated inside for the first time, and mortuary chapels became more detailed with artistic carvings. Statues and stelae of kings were placed in temples for rituals. The invention of the potter's wheel made pottery better. However, by the Sixth Dynasty, the Old Kingdom began to fall apart. Big construction projects drained resources, and fights broke out between officials, priests, and scribes. Regional governors, called nomarchs, stopped obeying the king, and the government lost control. This collapse ended the Old Kingdom. First Intermediate Period. Egypt split into two smaller states, with the north ruled from Memphis and the south from Thebes. This period of civil unrest lasted around 150 years. During this time, different regions developed their own unique art styles. Mentuhotep II brought Egypt back together after a time of division. The first tall stone monuments called obelisks were built in Heliopolis by King Senusret I. In the 11th dynasty, the god Amun-Ra became very important, especially in the city of Thebes. Another key pharaoh was Amenemhat I, who started the 12th dynasty. He moved Egypt's capital to a new city called Ichtawi. Art changed a lot during this time. Statues of women started to appear, showing their individuality. Coffins shaped like human bodies became popular, along with small figures called shabtis, which were buried with people to help them in the afterlife. Special jars called canopic jars, with lids shaped like human heads, were used to hold organs during the mummification process. Second Intermediate Period. A group of rulers from the Near East called the Hyksos took control of the northern part of Egypt. Avaris became the new capital. After about 100 years of Hyksos rule, the rulers of Thebes began to fight back. Eventually, Egypt was unified again. New Kingdom. In 1470 BCE, Hatshepsut became the first female pharaoh and ruled successfully. Thutmose III, the sixth pharaoh of the 18th dynasty, ruled for over 50 years and is often called the Napoleon of Egypt by modern scholars. He led Egypt to its greatest military and economic height, conquering lands in northern Syria and Nubia. Around 1350 BCE, Akhenaten tried to change Egyptian religion by introducing the worship of one god, Aten. In 1334 BCE, Tutankhamun ruled, restoring traditional religious practices. In 1290 BCE, Ramses II ruled, known for his long reign and many achievements. The Third Intermediate Period began after the death of Ramesses XI in 1070 BCE. During this time, Egypt was divided and faced constant struggles for power. The high priests of Thebes controlled Upper Egypt in the south, while the Smendes ruled Lower Egypt in the north. A third group, the Libyans, had taken over the delta region of the Nile. These three groups fought fiercely to gain total control of Egypt. At the same time, the Assyrians became a major threat. They eventually drove the Kushites out of Egypt and took control from the rulers of Thebes and Memphis. During the late period of ancient Egypt, the Assyrians ruled Egypt indirectly by placing local families and clans in charge, forming the 26th dynasty, known as the Sate Kings. The capital city during this time was Sais. One of these Sate kings, Psamtik I, sought help from Greece to remove the Assyrians, marking the beginning of Greece's influence in Egypt. The Greeks were even given land to settle in Egypt. In the early 6th century BCE, the Persians attacked Egypt. Pharaoh Psamtik III was defeated by the Persian king Cambyses II at the Battle of Pelusium. Egypt became part of the Achaemenid Persian Empire, along with Cyprus and Phoenicia. The Persians maintained strong control over the region. At the start of the 5th century BCE, the Egyptians briefly regained control under native rulers, but this independence was short-lived. The Persians returned and established the 31st dynasty in 343 BCE. However, their rule also ended quickly. In 332 BCE, Alexander the Great entered Egypt without resistance and drove out the Persians, marking a new chapter in Egypt's history. The Ptolemaic period began after Alexander the Great conquered Egypt in 332 BCE. After his death, one of his generals, Ptolemy, took control of Egypt and founded the Ptolemaic dynasty, which ruled for nearly 300 years. The period ended in 30 BCE, when Cleopatra, the last ruler of the Ptolemaic dynasty, died. After her death, Egypt became a province of the Roman Empire, marking the end of its ancient kingdom.